Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Strand. My name is Sabir. For a little bit of history, Strand was founded in 1927 by the Bass family over on 4th Avenue's Book Row. Stretching from Union Square to Astor Place, Book Row gradually dwindled until after over 92 years, Strand is the sole survivor, still run by the Bass family, still housing new and used books, and still running near 400 events a year. Tonight, I'm excited to welcome Daniel José Older, the beloved and best-selling author, to celebrate and discuss his eagerly anticipated new book, The Book of Lost Saints. Older has won the International Latino Book Award and has been nominated for the Kirkus Prize, the Mythopoeic Award, the Locus Award, the Andre Norton Award, and the World Fantasy Award. Here to talk with him about the Book of Lost Saints is writer, host, educator, and Strand favorite, Ashley C. Ford. So, enough from me. I'll turn it over to these folks.
These chairs are so comfortable. Just gonna take a nap.
I love these chairs. When we were backstage, I asked them, so which chairs do you have out? They were like the big armchairs.
The good ones.
Yes. So excited.
I'm sorry
Thank
for
you
y'all.
guys so much for being here.
Because we got the good chairs. You gotta write
Nice
a book.
Cheers, guys. Thank you all so much for being here. This is about to be so much fun for me. Hopefully, hopefully for you
That's
as
what
well.
matters.
But I got to tell you, sitting on a stage in front of some of Daniel's nearest and dearest to talk about this great book and give him as much shit as I want to publicly,
Yes.
I must say, what a glorious day today is. Before we get started with questions, I'm going to have Daniel set up a little bit and read just a touch from the book here. And
Now, I asked Ashley to pick a section without telling me what section it is. So you can blame her if it's trash. There's no trash sections in this book.
there are no trash
Why would I do that?
sections. Okay, I don't show up at the book launches for trash books, first of all. Second of all, I think it's a really great introduction to some characters, also to your, at times, masterful, not all the time, use of
You
language.
can say all the time. It's fine.
So yeah, I would like you to start here at the top of chapter 9 and stop next to the red dot.
Oh, you are prepared. I would love to. Thank you.
I know what I like to do.
All
There you
right. This is The Book of Lost Saints, Chapter 9. The dark New Jersey streets slide past. I see Ramon is as muddle-headed as I am, frowning out the window, wrapped in a carousel of thoughts, worries, and fantasies that I wish I could strip away from him forever. But that is not our path. He'll have to learn on his own how to quiet that raging mind. I stay lost in my own imaginings all through the gasps of relief and asphyxiating hugs from Idina and Marcos. When they've talked all out and moved on to other topics and slurped down several bowls of reheated rice and beans and more than a few Coronas, Ramon hugs them both and comes in the room. He keeps all the lights off, flips open his laptop, and scrolls mindlessly through some emails. "Hacer," begins one, and I see Ramon smile like he's just bumped into an old friend. "I'm sending a track for you to make into another absurdly fucking amazing work of art to post on your MySpace." Seriously, this book takes place in 2004. Seriously, the people here are getting pirated CDs of your shit como nada. But are we getting paid? Ni un centavo chavo, como dicen los pavos. But all my guys on the black market routes keep selling more and asking me what else you got. This one track I'm sending is old as the sun. A singer named Maria Teresa Vera, the godmother of Cuban music, my friend, 20 años. Do what you feel with it. I'm positive it will be magic. My guy Catabalas digitized it just for you. Also attached is a rap by one of my other hermanos. We put it on a click track that should line up with whatever you decide to do. The crew sends love. And listen, when the fuck are you bringing your ass down here? Everything is in place for a grand production. Say the word and I roll it out. Un abrazo bien fuerte, mano, cacique. I already know what this track is and what's going to happen is already happening as he prepares to play it. My dress shoes clacking on the linoleum kitchen tiles, my little hands in Isabel's, both of us looking kind of irritated because Nilda is telling us what to do. But in a tiny secret chamber of my heart, I'm thrilled because this means Nilda is about to play piano. Idina! Ramon bellows so suddenly it makes me lurch backward from his shoulders and send a tiny breeze-like adjustment rippling through the air. Ramon raises one eyebrow and looks around the room. What's up? Idina appears, brushing her teeth and wearing some stylish black silk pajamas. What's this mean? Idina leans over and frowns at the screen. Chavo is Mexican for kid, I think. Cacique has Mexican friends, I guess. So not one penny kid like the turkeys say? I know that, thank you. I'm saying, what does it mean? Oh, Idina straightens, brushes, thinks. I don't know, just an expression, I guess. He sent you a Maria Teresa Vera track? My mom used to listen to her. Idina's spontaneity and ease with the world disappears whenever she mentions her family. You can barely make out the last few words of what she says. Oh, I'd never heard of her. Yeah, she's standing, wrapping her arms around herself, even though the heater is cranking away. Old-timey guitar-playing songstress. You gonna make a track from it? That's what Comandante Cacique has requested, so yeah, why not? You wanna hear it? Sure, Idina says, but it sounds more like a whispered moan. Ramon frowns and clicks his mouse, and the room is suddenly full with that scratchy white hum of a very long time ago. The guitar sounds like it's playing from underwater. A tumbling construction of shaken notes resolves into a suave, confident vamp. Wow, Ramon says. Inside him, the crooked nostalgia churns, and the one that took over his mind in Enrique's mansion. Each scratchy note brings with it an image of that imagined island. The corny palm trees in Plaza, sure, but there is something deeper there too. The sense of loss, the impossible reach toward a family before it was shattered. Ramon has never seen Cuba, but he longs for it. Idina just nods, eyes closed, and we begin again. My dress shoes clack on the linoleum kitchen tiles, and Isabel's hands squeeze mine as Nilda's notes ring out from the old piano. Her fingers stretch expertly across the keys, and she makes that opening riff feel dramatic, majestic. It's what falling in love must feel like. And then, my favorite part, her left hand joins in, and the bass tumbles along beneath the melody. I imagine a manly lover sweeping into the room with wiggling eyebrows, sliding through the sly sensuality of those tinkling high notes with his thick vibrato strut, and the two voices gallivanting through the air above us, dipping and diving and pulsing. My sister is a whole orchestra. I can't even concentrate on the steps. Nilda's music is so enthralling. Here in New Jersey, the voices sweep in. A woman's louder, firm, and impassioned, but somehow vulnerable, demanding. The man's a softer undercurrent, beneath it, barely there. Que te importa, que te ame. And the guitars dance along in mocking echoes. You okay? Idina shakes her head. You want to talk about it? Another shake. Should I turn it off? No. Okay. Si las cosas, the duo croons, and silently I croon too. Que uno quiere, se pudieran alcanzar. And it's perfect. The feeling like the words and the music were created in total unison with each other and meant to be sung just like that, in this very moment. If the things we wanted could be reached, tú me quisieras lo mismo que 20 años atrás. I remember this version of the song too. There was an era when it was done 1,000 times over by every conjunto in the club or fool with a guitar on the malecón. You would still love me as you did 20 years ago. Smoothly tragic, like all great boleros, a total emotional train wreck. Perfectly harmonized and squeezed into a 3.5-minute ditty. But none of that compares to Nilda's fingers stretching across the piano as Isabel and I try pathetically to keep up on the linoleum kitchen tiles. It's a habanera, Nilda yells, bringing the song to an abrupt, crashing halt. Not a waltz. You have to do it with passion. I giggle, and Isabel rolls her eyes, and then Nilda inserts herself between us, sweeping me up in a ridiculous dance as I squeal, and then dipping me so my head hovers just above the tiles. Like this, she says, passion. I'm going to bed, Idina whispers when the song winds to a close. Ramon stands, not sure what to do with his body. Okay, good night. And she's gone. That was a good choice.
I know, I'm good at this.
That's true. That is true.
So why don't you tell us what the book is about?
Oh, man.
Come on.
I figured. The Book of Lost Saints is narrated by a woman who disappeared during the Cuban Revolution and has returned as a spirit in New Jersey in 2004, the MySpace era, to haunt her nephew, who is a DJ and a hospital security guard and kind of a lump of douche a little bit, if we're being honest. A good guy, but, you know, not that motivated. And she has to find her memories by inhabiting his dreams. That's the only way that she can access her life. And so we see her life through his dreams, and in doing that, she goads him to go back to Cuba and find out what happened to her. That was pretty good.
That was pretty good.
I feel like...
Yeah, that was a really great synopsis.
That. Yeah, I did that, yeah.
What is a ghost?
Oh, jeez. What is a ghost? The friends we made along the way. You know, I think a lot about spirit, obviously, for many different reasons, you know. And because I write so many ghost stories, whenever I do school visits, I get the question, do you believe in ghosts? I also get that question from adults, and they say it in the same way. But, and I'm always like, believing them, like, we hang out, you know, like, I share cigars with them, and we eat together and stuff. And, like, you know, spirit and ghosts, it is really what carries us and what got us here and what is fought so that we could be here. And so what I try to do with my work is honor that, you know, and that's the truth about spirit and about the past. I think that we ignore a lot in literature by turning it into, you know, something horrible and something that we have to be afraid of and run from. And so much of this book in particular is really about asking the question, what's it like for them to be watching of us? You know, like we say all the time, like we're the dreams of our ancestors, but like what's it like to be one of the ancestors and like see your dreams fucking up? Being ain't shit with their life, you know what I mean? Like, and then being like, shit, like what am I supposed to do now? You know, and that's Marisol, who's the narrator. That's a lot of her struggle, is like trying to not be too involved, but also to get what she needs, which is to find out what happened to herself.
I love that. I also love the image of the ancestors, you know, sort of looking down and being just really discouraged by TikTok. Just like, wow, that's what it was all for.
It's a mess. Whatever brings joy.
You just gonna keep letting the water run? Okay, talk to me about the origin of this book. Because if you have the book and you read all the way to the end, you see that the germination of the idea came from a walk. Sorry.
Can we get a little more volume on these? Thank you.
Sorry about that. But you see that the germination of this idea came from a walk with your friend Sam. So can you talk to
the guy in the hat?
Yeah, about how that happened.
Yeah. So Sam is here. Sam Reynolds is one of my best friends. He's an amazing astrologer and just a good person. Don't tell anybody I said that. Don't tweet it. No, Sam is wonderful. And Sam and I were taking a walk in Bed-Stuy, and I was about to go off to grad school, and I was trying to figure out what to write because I knew I had this sort of like time in which to do a project that would not be for a publisher. I didn't realize how right I was until years later when I was trying to publish it, and it took me like 5 or 6 years to actually find a publisher, but that's the beautiful journey, you know what I mean? Because here we sit today. But anyway, rewind. Sam and I were taking a walk. It was autumn, I believe, and I was like, Sam, I don't know what the fuck I'm gonna write. And Sam was like, well, what about like? Sam said, I always think about the spirits of the Isle of Pines, which is a famous Cuban prison, where members of my own family, were kept, and they actually had a Panopticon in that prison, which I always remark at because the Panopticon as a theory of power, that Foucault wrote about, it's this idea of this one tower in the middle looking at all the prisoners and they all see an eye, right? I was so fascinated by it in college. I thought, it just was one of those ideas that really struck me and said so much about the world and about power to me. And it wasn't until later that I found out how deeply entwined with my family history the actual working panopticons that were still in the world were. But I had also always walked in some ways with those spirits and thought about them in a literary sense, wondered how they would fit into my personal canon. And I never had an answer, but I think was a little afraid to look at it because I think I knew that when I did, I would have to write this book. And this book was intense to write. It was a lot, and so I needed Sam to say that, which was, it's just to say, to knock on that door that I'd had. Do you guys remember Bloom County? Mm-hmm. The characters all have an anxiety closet, and every once in a while, like, someone will break out of it and go running around naked through the strip or whatever, and it's like, who knows, their mom or something, And I think we all have that. I love that idea. It's hilarious, and I think sometimes we keep books in it, or creative projects in it, and sometimes those are the best projects. But sometimes we need, and that's friendship, is that person that comes along and is like, on that door that you're like the most terrified to open, Mm-hmm. And so he did that like a good friend. And I knew when I opened it, it would just be an avalanche of a book, and that's what happened.
One of the things that I like most about this book is, in a time where we're having a lot of conversations about intergenerational relations, this book quite literally shows the process of two long separated generations, but two family members who in a way need each other and are both learning from and processing through one another's lives, which is kind of what we should be doing anyway, I think. So I'm wondering, like, what do we do with the messages we get from the ghosts of our past? Where do we put those? I mean, I know that for you, it's probably more of an artistic expression, but for people in general, what do we do with that?
I like the amen corner over here. Word. What do we do? On one level, I think that's exactly the question that I want to ask with the book. But that's also a cop-out, and I kind of hate when people are like, oh, books are just supposed to ask questions, not answer them. Like, motherfucker. If you just read a book and all it's doing is asking questions, like, you just kind of feel like, what was that? But also, asking questions is a form of answering questions, right? Because what questions we ask matters. And that's a question that matters. And so that is one of the questions I went in asking myself. Because it's a question that I grew up asking myself. Because I know that, like, very literally, people fought and died for me to be able to write that book and to be here and to live the life I lived, And so I also know that, like, feeling guilty about that is the opposite of what they wanted to happen. That's not why they fought it. They didn't fight and die for me to feel guilty, or have neuroses over the fact that they fought and died. And that's easy to say and harder to live. But I knew that, like, for me, healing is always done through creativity. So to heal the wound, first of all, between the heart and the head, which I think we're always trying to heal on some level. Mm-hmm. But second of all, the intergenerational wound of realizing that we all come from trauma. And that's a beautiful thing because we get somewhere better for it, And they're happy to see us get somewhere better. And so, I think story is the mechanism to understand that on some level, and that's where this story of, like, a very literal ancestor trying to find harmony within this new world by means of connecting to someone that she is literally attached to, because if she gets too far away, she starts to fade. And then him understanding very gradually his attachment to her and his need to uncover, which is to say his attachment to the truth, right? To find out what really happened, not just to her, but in a larger way to his family, and in a much larger way to Cuba and to his people. You know, that's really the question. Is I think we're always dealing with microcosms and macrocosms, and they get bigger and bigger as we go deeper and deeper. And all that is to say, we find our way through story. Story is the light that gets us there.
Talk to me about the healing you find in being connected in some way or another to a homeland, and not just in terms of culture and community, but in terms of the earth and of the land. What was that?
Is she on the mic? Oh, it's coming through?
Is this coming through?
Hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, basically, I just wanted to know about the connection between healing and the actual land. You know, like there is, and I know this from talking to you, that there was a lot of healing, or the beginning of healing, that came for you in certain places from visiting Cuba. and from being on that land. So I kind of want to talk to you about that, because in the book, you know, like you have one person who lived their whole life on this land, and then one person who did not. And you're on either side of this revolution, of this war, you know. So talk to me about like the land and how important that is to the healing process.
I went to Cuba like 7 days before 9/11 on a student trip, and I was there for 3 months after that. And it was the kind of healing that just smacks you in the face, like fucks you up, but it's like the fuck up that you needed instead of the fuck up that you had. And that's what that was. You know, like I struggled the whole trip. I struggled with who I was, what it meant to be who I was, you know, and I also found myself in a very real way. I learned it's in the minutia, and that's what's so hard to understand, I think, for people that haven't lived that journey. And I don't mean the journey to Cuba, which is its own kind of hell, like, in terms of bureaucracy. But the other journey of you know, getting to find out like a deeper truth about who you are, you know, like understanding that side of my family on a deeper level, how finding parts of myself that I didn't realize were them. You know, and finding them in a whole nation of people that interrupt when they're talking about movies. You know what I mean? Like, because you can't get a word in edgewise if you don't interrupt, right? And there's different kinds of interrupting. Sometimes it's a power play, and sometimes it's because you're having an amazing conversation. And like those nuances of those different forms, that's a language. And, you know, the language of trauma from living in a place where you're not allowed to say the leader's name out loud, so you have to have a sign language to do it. And the language of, you know, coño being an all-purpose word that has so much meaning. It's like only rivaled by motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like, those are all just nuances of life and language that I had to go experience, because you can't really you can't explain that. You know what I mean? Like, you can't explain motherfucker to someone. You either understand it or you don't. Like, it's true with coño, and it's true with the tragedy of living in a place like Cuba, which is so easily photographed, you know, which looks so pretty, and it's so easy to go there and take a picture and go on the official tour and feel like you get it with your passport and your, you know, homeland that you can go back to, and not get it. And I'm not even claiming that I got it, because I didn't, because you can't. But it is a place that requires such unraveling. People are always like, I'm going to Cuba to learn Spanish, and I'm like, R.I.P. my brother. Like, but the fucked up thing is, it's not them that are really going to suffer from that. It's the people that they interact with, and that's been true, you know, throughout history. And that's the tragedy of the island too. Is that it's not the Yankees that come there, you know, to take pictures and fuck up that really suffer the consequences of that. And so there's so many layers of it. And all I wanted to do was take the conversation deeper than just like, oh, wow, what do you think about Elian? You know, the bullshit that people say from the headlines that they read. And that's it, like, because, you know, fuck small talk, right? And so literature's job is to, like, say fuck you to small talk. And that was like one thing that I was trying to do, was say, this conversation is so much deeper than like this little cocktail party thing that you're trying to do right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, in addition to saying fuck you to small talk, which it does literally say in the book. Just kidding. It doesn't say that.
It probably does. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
It doesn't. I promise. One of the things that it does say quite literally in the book, and I think through the story over and over again, is that vulnerability is required of the warrior.
You said vulnerability is required of the voyeur?
Of the warrior.
Of the warrior.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes, that vulnerability.
Glad I said that in the book. I must have done my job.
That's what is required of a warrior. And the thing that really struck me about that was the fact that when you have two people on either side of a war, the only thing that can bridge, I think, that disconnect of understanding is vulnerability. Like at some point, somebody's gonna have to tell the truth about what hurts, right?
Yes.
When you're talking about that in the way of the spirit and in having sort of, I guess, that battle within, even more than externally, how do you write that in a way that doesn't, I guess, compromise? Ramon is very much, like you said, like a little bit of an asshole, and like he's a little, and like a guy.
Yeah.
Like he's just like a guy.
He's a dude.
He's just a dude.
He's a dude.
And he's
a lump.
And he's learning how to not only process his Tia, his dead Tia in his head, but also like come to terms with a lot of his own stuff and what he doesn't understand about his history and himself and his life. How do you do that without, I guess, just writing everything down on a character? Do you know what I mean? Like just saying this is the worst of him and this is the saddest he's ever been, because that's what people usually do to try to like inject vulnerability into a story, or the need for it is somebody has to hit rock bottom, and this isn't rock bottom. This is just a very strange transition.
That's an excellent title for a book.
A very strange,
transition.
So I feel like my question is definitely getting lost here, but it's sort of
I
like,
love it.
Like, talk to me about why vulnerability is required of the warrior.
Such a fascinating question. Just because I hadn't thought of it in those terms. Well, one thing I'll say is like, there's almost two protagonists in this book, but it's really Marisol's book, you know? And Ramon is like, in a weird way, her guide, even though we're so used to seeing, right, spirit guide is a thing, you know, and
Yes.
she's the spirit. So usually it's the spirit that's doing the guiding. But I don't think we recognize enough that as we are uplifted in our own journeys, the spirits around us get uplifted too. The spirits that work with us are on their own journeys, and they progress. They gain light from our gaining light, and it's a conversation. You know, it's not just it's like the idea of the muse just being like, you know, just talking away, monologuing in your ear. That's not how a muse works. A muse is someone you have a conversation with. Sometimes that's spirit, sometimes it's a person, you know. Some of us are blessed to have those people in our lives. And some of us are blessed to have those people in our spiritual realms. But Marisol is who we see through, whose eyes we see through. And she's the one on the journey. And Ramon is, you know, her helper. And he's a mess and he has his own arc. But it's her who has to get him to do what needs to be done, you know, and it's her who has to take the ultimate act, you know, as we move forward. But it's true that both of them have to become vulnerable, and the journey itself strips both of them raw on very real levels, because he's living her trauma vicariously, you know. He's witnessing it and experiencing it in his dreams, and it gives him diarrhea. You know, and it messes him up in all these different ways, and he's suffering from vicarious PTSD, which we all do, you know. And that sounds bad, but it's actually beautiful, because in a way we're taking on the burden of our elders and lightening it for them, And that's sort of part of our job, you know. Again, not to be downtrodden by it or beaten by it, but to then become strengthened by it. And that's the end of that journey, is to be strengthened by it. Marisol, on her part, you know, realizes that she's hurting him and has to really take a moment to be like, am I a parasite? You know, which I think a lot of us do also, when we realize that the people in our realm who love us suffer vicariously from our traumas. And then we have to realize that there's no way for that not to happen.
Right.
You cannot exist in a sphere of love and not pass on some of your shit. But that's okay. And you're taking on some shit too. And like the muse relationship, like the spirit relationship, it's always in conversation. It's always in exchange if you let it be. But everything goes wrong in the book when people keep secrets and when people are silent. And the whole work of everybody in the book to get to where they need to get is unraveling that silence.
Right. I love that you went there, because my next question has to do with that.
I did that on purpose.
My question really is like, how, because the book is really condemning of secrets, which is fine by me. I don't like secrets either. I think, I generally think that there is a difference between privacy and secrets. And that privacy is about what you want to keep for yourself, to yourself, or something that you realize is sensitive between you and another person. And secrets, to me, denote shame. You only keep secrets when there's something you're ashamed of. So I have no problem with privacy. Be private all you want, you know.
That's a necessary definition.
Yes. So
I like that a lot.
one of the things that I'm wondering is, like, this family history has really splintered under the weight of secrets. How do we prevent that for future generations? Is there, I know that we must necessarily, I think, in dealing with our own trauma at times, like other people who love us do fall into, you know, the sightline, and things happen, and that's unfortunate. Secrets exacerbate that in a lot of cases. But are they necessary? Like, do we get through life? Do we have families and relationships without secrets?
That's a good ass question.
Just wondering.
This is what I mean. Questions are answers. You know what I mean? Like, you could have sat up here and just asked a bunch of bullshit.
But I like you.
You would never do that.
Kind of.
But I appreciate that you brought it like that. I think here's the thing that happens when you write, especially when you're a writer of color and you write a book with a character of color, it's automatically autobiographical, right?
Yeah.
You wrote a memoir. It's a novel. It's a memoir. Tell us about why it's about your life. It's not about my fucking life. Yeah, but it's gotta be. You know, this book is not a memoir. And in a way, I think of it as like, it's kind of like a love letter to my family for them not being the way the characters in the book are.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Because I wasn't raised with secrets, you know. I wasn't lied to about what happened. And I also wasn't raised with propaganda, which is very rare in a Cuban household. I wasn't taught that, the Cubans who stayed are bad, you know, and the devil. And when I went to Cuba, the family that did stay didn't try to teach me that the ones that left were gusanos, you know, or worms. And that's a rarity. That's hard to find, you know. So the book is about how fucked up we get when we keep those secrets. And the book is about how strong we can be if we don't.
Love that. Okay, last question.
All
You
right.
ready?
All right, I'm ready.
Last question from me anyway.
Okay.
What's next for you?
Oh, shit. I wasn't ready for that. What indeed?
He should have been.
I know. That's that ultimate last question. What is next? All kinds of good shit. Star Wars. Do you want me to tell you all the Star Wars gossip? I can't. Because they'll sue my ass. but I could pretend. I could make some shit up. No, I really don't know that much. But I am working on a secret project for Star Wars that I can't say anything about. But we will be able to say lots about it in January. Stay tuned. Watch this space or whatever. Yeah, I know. It's exciting. I know. Yes, so Star Wars is coming up. I'm going to start writing comics and graphic novels coming up.
What?
That is new information. So
He didn't tell me that.
I didn't tell anybody that. More on that soon.
Yes.
Also can't really talk about that. But what I can talk about is this. I have 2 trilogies wrapping up next year. The Shadowshaper Cipher, which the 3rd book is coming out on January 7th, I think.
Yeah, it's my birthday.
Your birthday. A Capricorn book, as it should be. Yes. So that's obviously like the end to an amazing journey that I'm really excited about. Shadowshaper is kind of, the book that made me in a certain way, and it's very cool to come now 10 years later and close out the whole thing. And I will say that also for those of you who've read Shadowshaper and Shadow Has Fall, Shadowshaper Legacy, which is the final book, really gets into, speaking of family history, it gets into the origins of shadowshaping and the mythology and the folklore behind shadowshaping, and it's all very interconnected. And it's actually my favorite Shadowshaper book because of that, because there are these sections, and it's so where it talks about those myths, and it goes back in time in that way. So that, and then Dactyl Hill Squad, the 3rd book in that series, comes out in June, which I'm also really excited about. And in that book, the kids, Dactyl Hill Squad is about the Civil War, but there's dinosaurs, obviously. And the kids have now ended up, they started in New York, but they ended up flying on Pteranodon back all the way into the heart of the Civil War. In the 2nd book, they were in the Battle of Chickamauga, and then they ended up in New Orleans. And in the 3rd book, it's a lot of New Orleans stuff, which I really have close to my heart, obviously, and Mexico. And there's a whole history of Mexico's connection to our Civil War that's super fascinating. Exactly. And pterodactyls, So
the hits keep on coming, is what you're saying.
So the hits keep on coming. And then in 2021, I have a book called Flood City coming out that I literally wrote in 2011. And it just took a long time to make its way through and arrive, but it's coming in 2021, and that's about after the world is covered in water and there's one city left. Mind you, that might be true by then. So
you know what I'm saying?
I didn't mean to be so accurate, but here we are. It was a fantasy when I wrote it.
That sounds so exciting. I'm so excited about all of that.
Thank you.
It's going to be so much fun. I can't wait to read them all earlier
What's
than
next
everybody else. What?
What's next for you? You didn't see that one coming, did you? Bam! The hunter is hunted. Go ahead.
Well, I just interviewed someone for the cover of a magazine.
Which magazine?
Talk about yet.
Okay.
It is. I would say it's a beauty magazine, a fashion and beauty magazine, and he will be the first cis man on the cover of this magazine, which sounds like
that sounds problematic.
But I promise you, you're gonna love it. I have no qualms sitting in front of you right now and saying you will feel very good about this when it comes out, because I feel good about it right now.
Tell them about your book. Sorry, come on.
I'm writing a book. It is coming out in spring 2021. And it's a memoir, and it's about my girlhood and my young womanhood, and things that happen in that time.
Is that the title?
It's called Things That Happen by Ashley C. Ford.
It's going to be amazing. Ashley's one of my
Support your indies.
favorite. She's definitely one of my favorite writers. She's also one of my favorite people. She's an amazing person. She's a terrific friend, one of my best friends, and I love her. And please give it up for Ashley.
He gonna cry. Look at her.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Yet. I am thirsty.
That is mutual. Daniel is my family, and I'm gonna love him forever. So you might as well buy his book, because I'm gonna be coming to his houses. And he knows that when I show up, Dinner better be ready. So no excuses. I don't care. I don't care where your coin's at. Where's my meal at? That's just how I roll personally. Brittany
knows.
Brittany got me.
Facts.
We have a few minutes for questions from you guys. I only have one rule for questions, which is that you have to ask a question.
I feel like this crowd
understand.
knows that.
I feel like that's fair.
Yeah.
I understand that Daniel is amazing, and you probably want to be like, "Oh my God, you've changed my life,"
Shut up.
that's dope. But
You can
we
say
just don't
that.
have
You can say
time.
that. We make an exception
for that today.
comment. That's fine.
Today we're just gonna ask him a question. So if you have one for him, please feel free to raise your hand and we will get you a mic as soon as possible. Why don't we start there and then we'll come over here. Okay.
Brother Daniel, how you doing, man?
What's up?
I have 2 questions in case you want to throw the first one away. The first question is, Chuck Wendig took a lot of heat for doing his Star Wars novel from the group called The Phantom Menace because of his political speakings. Did you have any fallout like that, writing a Star Wars novel?
If you look at my Goodreads page, yes.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, people want to get mad about shit. They go, someone is always going to get mad about something Star Wars. It's like you can put money on it, and that's fine with me. I expected it. I embrace it. I don't care about it. It's sometimes funny, sometimes horrific. There are death threats out there.
Yeesh.
They come and go. I didn't get it nearly as bad as Chuck or most women. Especially black women, online. So I take it in stride, but it absolutely is out there. Yeah. Question over there.
Hi. What is it about the Latinx diaspora and like really all diasporas that lends itself so well to hauntings and ghost stories?
We've been through a lot as a people, and tragedy creates, I think, a drive towards life. And when you have been through that fire as a people, I think it creates a need to make sense out of it, but not sense in the logic way, sense in the spiritual way. To find a kind of a peace, and to harmonize that with the world around you. I think we're always asking ourselves, no matter who we are, how we got here, what's our origin story, And so many of our origin stories are soaked in blood, and also in triumph. It's really, there's always those two sides. It's like when I was a paramedic, and people are always like, "Wow, how did you sleep at night?" And I'm like, "I slept fucking great, man. I saved people's lives. How do you think I slept?" But yes, we dealt with death on a very regular basis. We saw the worst of humanity. We saw kids shot. We saw everything, and we saw people who would put down what they were doing and save someone's life in the middle of their business, whatever it was, and that's always there. That's always true, and I think. A lot of us Latinx folks do live at that crossroads of joy and tragedy, and have had to find out how to alchemize joy out of tragedy, and that's where ghosts come from.
I wanted to know how you got the idea for Shadowshaper series.
How I got the idea for it?
Yeah.
So many places, but in a way, Shadowshaping is a form of magic where you can bring art to life by putting spirits into it. And at the time, that was when I was working as a medic, and I was riding around Brooklyn on an ambulance, and a lot of times bored out of my mind. And it was gentrifying Brooklyn, of course, and you would see the murals up, for the dead. And there's one mural that was on DeKalb, I think. No, either way, up there, Fort Greene. Gentrified, and someone had bought the house and put a fence right in the middle of the guy's face. And when I tell you the amount that I wanted to burn the building down, just by looking at it, I just wanted to like Thanos it, because the rage it put inside of me as a spiritual person, to think that you could disrespect the dead that callously, for your pretty neighborhood. It made me so mad, and I thought, what if that mural could just go bah and knock down the fence, And I thought that would be nice. And then I thought, what if murals everywhere could stand up and fuck up gentrifiers? What would happen, And that image was very enduring. And in the first draft of Shadowshaper, the murals are actually become huge. And they stomp through the city towards downtown and like just lay waste to things. And it was like a little more melodramatic ultimately than what I was going for. But that was very much where a lot of it was coming from. It was a place of rage. And I believe very strongly in looking at our rage and honestly, and dealing with it and not trying to pretend like we just want to hug people who killed our family members and all that. Like rage is part of why we're still alive. It can't sustain us, but it is definitely part of why we're here. And so Shadowshaper is very much a book about rage, but also a book about finding strength and redemption and peace through community. And so it's those two pieces coming together. It's Maya. I'm ready.
This isn't really a question.
Yes.
So my question is more about writing and space and environment. So I know that you're now in New Orleans, now in relative your life now.
Not this moment.
Yeah, not this moment. But so I wanted to know, who was it? Virginia Woolf or some other white lady? She was like, how you have to have a room of one's own for writing. And as someone who works in publishing and writes, I know that there's a lot of pressure to be where the writing is, to be in New York, to be at the epicenter, and let that energy that New York has kind of
drain the life from your bones.
I mean, I am barely holding on as we speak, but how I just wanted to know, given that you wrote so many of your stories while you were still in New York, right, but now that you're in New Orleans and you're writing new stuff, right, how does that space feel, and do you feel that where you write has any impact on your process, or if it doesn't?
No, it definitely does. And that's a great question, especially in light of the spiritual conversation we're having, right? Because places have spirit and the spirits matter. And I really loved my life in Brooklyn, and Brooklyn sang to me every day. And that's why I wrote about it, because it was speaking all the time, and I had to listen because I lived there. And I got really sick of it. And I got tired of the rush. And it's not that it stopped speaking to me, but it became a voice that I didn't feel as close to. And that's one of the main reasons I left. New Orleans had been calling me for a long time. And I knew eventually I would have to answer, and the moment arrived. And so I did. But yes, it's not necessarily that I write more. I don't calculate those things, but I write happier in New Orleans. It's a city that embraces me every time I go there and shows me a certain kind of love that I needed to feel at that moment, and in this moment still. And so when I write there, it's a kind of writing from home that feels exactly the way it should. It's a kind of a peacefulness that I find, whether I'm in my house or in a coffee shop, that feels right. Having said that, because of deadlines and other things, I've had to write on the road, and and that's just sort of part of the job is you figure out how to do it when you have to. But writing in New Orleans feels like the place I'm supposed to write. Yeah.
And we have time for just one more question.
Daniel José Camacho.
Daniel José to Daniel José.
There's another Daniel José in the world. And he wrote a really beautiful review of Book of Lost Saints, which I really appreciated, brother.
I appreciated the book.
Now I'll let you speak.
Thank you. My question is simple. So for the research that you did, in the process of doing it, what caught you off guard, or what made you really change your mind? Because it's clear that you live with this history. It's part of your family story. It's part of your story in some way. But so it's not new, right? In some ways, right. But you also, I'm assuming, dug deep to really write it. So what was one thing that really switched gears that you weren't necessarily expecting?
Ooh, what? You said that was a simple question? Brother, how? I don't know. with like the Dactyl Hill Squad, right? Like, I randomly became fascinated with the Civil War era, and I didn't know why, but I assumed it was for a book. And eventually, I realized that with pterodactyls, and it made sense. And so I wrote that book, you know. And then I got really excited, and I kept researching. And I got obsessed with that even more. And what I'm trying to say is there was a very clear beginning of the research period, and it was before I knew what the book was. And then there was a very clear ending when I stopped reading about the Civil War so much. But this book, the research literally spans my life. You know, it's the stories I grew up on. It's the stories I then heard later when I left the house. It's the stories that I lived when I went to Cuba. It's so many different moments and turning points throughout my existence as a Cuban-American. And all the, and visiting Tios in Miami, that quintessential Cuban-American experience. All those different moments, you know. So I would say there were so many moments along that long road where my mind was opened more, where my idea of what Cuba was became larger and more profound, where things started to make sense on another level and never fully made sense, you know, and I hope I never think that things make sense, because they don't. But certainly along those roads, milestones included going to Cuba, but before that, actually going home to Boston, and finally insisting that I kind of closed the circle that was opened as a child when I refused to learn Spanish, because I was an impertinent child, and it felt like homework, because my mom is a Spanish professor. So I had to buck it, right? What? Don't teach me, right? We spoke Spanish in the house anyway. I just didn't want to sit down and like learn the subjunctive. Let's be honest, right? Just, man, I've learned to love it, but Jesus. So I went back to Boston and I said, like, you know, vamos a hablar español solamente en esa casa. And thank God my dad, you know, speaks Spanish with a terrible accent, bless his soul. But his grammar is pretty good, and I love him. And so we spoke Spanish for a summer, you know, and I reconnected to certain aspects of my family life in that way that were just dormant for so many years because I had kept that at bay a little bit. And then I went to Cuba. And immediately after that, and this is when I was 21, and learned so much there, as I spoke about, you know. So there were many turning points that it wasn't necessarily units of information so much as like large swaths of understanding, if that makes sense, that became clear to me. But I will say what I value so much is that for someone who has survived so much struggle, you know, my mom never said, you know, you're not allowed to think more complexly about Castro or about Cuba, you know. Fuck him for what he did, but understand the truth of it too. And it was never, oh, you know, what they're doing in Bolivia is trash because they're connected some way ideologically with what we barely survived. It was, thank God someone is standing up to imperialism again. Like, to have that level of nuance and understanding after living through so much trauma, you know, that's like, talking about role models. Like, I aspire to that, you know? So if I can touch on that with my book, you know, if I can speak to that level of heroism, of understanding, and that's, you know, what I went back to Boston to learn, is that truth and that level of compassion and understanding about the world. So I didn't mean to end on such a sad note, but I love my mom, so that's just it. Thank you all so much. You've been wonderful.
Thank you.
You are
Thank
great.
you. Daniel's going to be signing books right over here, so I'm pretty sure you can line up now.
Yes, and let me do a quick thank you all for being here. Thank you to Ashley motherfucking Ford. That's her official. Thank you to Aaron Stein, my editor, and Rhoda Beleza, who couldn't make it. Thank you to my wonderful publicist, Brittany and Molly. Thank you to my fiance, Brittany, who is amazing. You are all wonderful. I thank you all. All right, and thanks to Strand.